Well, we all know the bad news to this one, but I'm going to go in with my respects and do this video. 9 Spider-Man movies, from the worst to the best. Let's sit down and talk about it. Welcome geeks, nerds and people who still live at their parents' house. This is the Nerd Zone. I'm your host Lakin22, and today on Lakin22's Movie Chat, we are ranking the Spider-Man movies, from the worst one to the best one. To be honest with you, this is going to be more of a tribute video because of all of you know, recently on social media we have found out that Disney and Sony have cut their deal with Spider-Man. So unfortunately that means Disney no longer has control over Spider-Man and he will no longer be part of the MCU. Now I know this is very sad and the MCU probably won't be the same without him, well definitely won't. But Disney has released petitions to get Spider-Man back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and hopefully Sony can sum up the will to accept their deal. And well, let's just hope it goes well. I hope it really does. But anyway, the Spider-Man movies are a huge cornerstone in the superhero genre, because in 2002 we got the first Spider-Man movie, and that really skyrocketed the popularity of comic book films to a very, very high point. And it was all thanks to Sam Raimi. And it's still classed as one of the greatest Marvel movies, if not one of the greatest superhero movies to come out of the last century. So, well, this century. And, well, it's got a lot of movies. We got the Sam Raimi trilogy from 2002 to 2007. We had the Mark Webb duology from 2012 to 2014. We have the Tom Holland movies from 2017 to this year. And we have the Venom solo Tom Hardy movie released of last year. And also Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, before we get to this list, I again want to point out this is going to be like the Marvel Cinematic Universe ranking that I did before. I enjoy every single one of these movies. I think they're all brilliant, and some of them even masterpieces. But from 9 to 6, they're just the Spider-Man movies that, while I do enjoy a lot, I just don't enjoy as much as from 5 to 1. So yeah, let's have a good, lively discussion about these movies. And I don't want you getting too upset about what I put at the low point, what I put at the high point. This is what I've tried to do differently to other ranking YouTubers out there. What they do is, they say they do it in their opinion. And while it's true that some of them do, most of them do it on, it just as an interpretation, you know. They do it because they want the viewer to be happy and expect what's going to be at the bottom, what's going to be at the top. So like basically, right now, you probably would be expecting me to put The Amazing Spider-Man 2 at the bottom and Into the Spider-Verse at the top. Well, it's not going to be like that. And while I do agree that The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is not one of the best Spider-Man films compared to other people, and while Into the Spider-Verse I think is really, really brilliant, they're just not going to be in those spots. They're going to be in completely different spots. So let's just try and be fair. But anyway, why don't we get started? And here is our film in 9th place. Yep, you're probably wondering why I've put this so low. Spider-Man Homecoming, released of 2017 and directed by John Watts. Now, if you've seen my Marvel Cinematic Universe ranking, just skip this one because you've probably already heard what I've said about this film. So just skip on to the 8th place. But for you who haven't seen that video, I'm just going to come and say this reason again. Now, I don't think this film is horrible. I think it was a brilliant return to form for Spider-Man. especially with focusing on his high school life, which we definitely have not seen properly in any of the other films. But for me, well, I really do enjoy this film. The scale, while is not bad, it's just not the scale that I'm into. You know, I remember Spider-Man having these big scale villains and these big scale fight scenes, and watching this, I could say I was a teeny little bit underwhelmed with the scale. Not to say that it's bad, it was good having more development with these characters, and while the villain, the Vulture, is one of the best MCU villains out there, and it's got some decent action once it gets to it, and some good visuals, and brilliant storytelling, it's kind of hard for me to sit through when I'm used to big, action-packed superhero movies. And while I do agree it's one of the most rewatchable Marvel films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in my point of view, it's not as rewatchable as other films. So I apologise for all the Homecoming fans out there. This is just the bottom of my list, and I apologise. But compared to the other Spider-Man movies, this one was the most underwhelming. So, alright, this one, I'm just going to come out and say before we get to number 8, this one is going to piss off a lot of people out there. And I'm going to just say right now, sorry to all of them, but this movie that we're going to go on to next, while I agree is brilliant, very, very brilliant, I just didn't really enjoy it as much as other people have had. So let's just move on to our film in 8th place. Yeah, get your booze out. Oh, I'm going to get so many dislikes for this one. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, released in 2018 and directed by Bob Persichetti, Peter Ramsey, and Rodney Rothman. Now, hear me out on this one. I think this film is one of the most uniquely brilliant superhero films and animated films I have ever watched in my life. The animation is so beautiful to look at. It's literally like watching a comic book come to life. The character development, the soundtrack, the action sequences, basically everything in this movie is just amazing. But the reason why it's only in 8th place, it's only because it's probably just a film I'm not used to yet, but again, it just takes too long to get to the stuff that's exciting. Now, don't get me wrong, seeing the spider lair and all these differently unique full animations, it's a jolt of a movie. But it goes for a lot of potential, and it is one film that I do like to sit through, but I like to see what the action's like, and while it does get to quite a bit of action, it does take its while to get there. And I know you're probably thinking, oh yeah, but it's a comic book movie, you gotta have your character development. Well, I do agree with that. I really do agree that there's got to be a lot of character development when we're introducing a new sort of movie and new characters. But I also want to be properly entertained. If I was to watch a comic book movie and there'd be like minimum action, but a lot of development in characters, in all honesty, I'd be a little bit bored. I mean, my family are huge fans of comic book movies. I mean, they don't read comic books, but they love watching the films. And when I showed them this film, they weren't impressed. They found it boring and pointless. And don't be mad at my family. They're just not the big comic book fan that I am. But after listening for what they said when I rewatched it, while I do disagree with them, I also kind of agree with them. It's confusing. I confuse myself with why I put this so low on the list, but, well, I know. It's only because probably I still haven't got used to the film yet. Probably need to watch it a few more times, but at the minute, it's one of those films I would watch again, but it's not going to be one of those films I'm going to be like, yeah, I found that insanely awesome. I'm going to watch that for the rest of my life. And that's all I'll say. Now, let's move on to our film in 7th place. Yeah, The Amazing Spider-Man, released in 2012 and directed by Mark Webb. And as you can all tell right now, you're probably noticing I haven't put films like Spider-Man 3, Venom, or The Amazing Spider-Man 2 at the bottom. You're probably thinking that, am I a Spider-Man fan at all? Well, I am. It was the first superhero that I was introduced to in my life, and while I do really love Spider-Man, I just happen to enjoy those films more. And with this one, I thought it was a good return for the character. They took him into a more serious tone and shoved a little spy thriller edge into it. And, a more modern resemblance of the character, especially in modern comic books. And I thought it was a nice, unique taste to the film. But what are its problems? It's got a few, actually. And, well, I think what its main problem is while it's supposed to be going in a new direction, it does take a lot out of the 2002 Spider-Man film, because we don't want to see Uncle Ben die again. It's something we've already seen and has been done so much better in the original movie. And the villain, the Lizard, while he's entertaining to watch, for the film's tone being a bit more serious and edgy, he seems a bit too surreal to be in the film. And when we're wanting to watch a Spider-Man movie with this sort of tone, we want to see a more, grounded villain. Something like Morbius or Kingpin. Something that you can believe are going to be a supervillain in this dark, edgy version of the superhero Spider-Man. But now let's get to the good stuff. The good stuff in this film is I believe Andrew Garfield more as Spider-Man than I do as Tobey Maguire. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Tobey Maguire enough as Spider-Man, but there are too many scenes of him being, too goofy, too much like a doofus, or something like that. There's too many scenes of him like that in the original trilogy, and you're like, really? This guy is a superhero? I don't believe that. But when I'm watching Andrew Garfield, he definitely has some of his socially awkward moments, but most of the time he's the triumphant badass, and he's just the person I believe more as Spider-Man. And the action was very much improved, because when I watched the action from the original movie, it seemed a little bit too rehearsed, like something you'd see at Disneyland. You can tell the choreography has been staged, but here it's like watching Leonardo da Vinci paint. It's so exuberant and fluid. It's amazing watching it. And let's get to the big deciding point here. Gwen Stacy in this film is a billion times better than Mary Jane in the original trilogy. Why? Because she actually does stuff. She helps Spider-Man. She's smart. She's the type of superhero girlfriend we want. Mary Jane was not. So all I can say, the highs in this film are very, very high. The lows in this film are very, very low. So low that you can't even see it on the screen. So, there we go. Now let's move on to our film in 6th place. Yeah. Spider-Man Far From Home, released in 2019 and directed by John Watts. Now again, if you've seen the Marvel Cinematic Universe ranking, you can skip this one because it's in that video and you probably already know why I've put it here. But if you haven't, free to watch. I consider this Spider-Man film a huge improvement over Homecoming. And the reason why is because the scale got so much more to the Spider-Man level that I wanted. He's facing 4 elementals that are amazing to watch. The action sequences are jolting, and Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, he's one of the best MCU villains out there. But this is where it gets to the big deciding point for me and why it's so low on the list. When they were developing Mysterio in the first half of this film, I really related to him. Now, I knew he was going to turn out to be the villain anyway because I'm a comic book fan. Of course I'd know, but the way they treated Mysterio in the first half of this film, I was like, wow, I like this guy. I really do. He seems more like an uncle to Peter Parker. And then when it gets to the reveal, his motives seem too clichéable and a little bit not not very relatable, you know. You know, when you watch the Vulture in Homecoming, this is why I think the Vulture is better than Mysterio. Because with Vulture, the reason why he's a bad guy is because he's finding a way to provide for his family. But with Mysterio, it's because Stark called his technology barf. Wow, I can relate to that guy. I used to have a TV that was called shit. So, you can get why his motives were a little bit lower. But apart from that, his humour, his visuals, his action sequences, and his performances were very well done. But the reason why I've only put it in the 6th place is because of Mysterio's motives when he is revealed to be the villain. Well, they say reveal, but we already knew he was going to be the villain. But now, let's move on to our top 5. Here's our film in 5th place. Yep, another controversial picking. The original Spider-Man, released in 2002 and directed by Sam Raimi. Now, before I get a lot of hate comments, I just want to say, I love this movie. It's one of the first superhero movies I have ever watched, and no matter when I'm in my 30s, I would still watch this film. And I still see it as a classic, because it probably had the most faithfulness to the Spider-Man comics. And the tone and direction that Sam Raimi went with was so unique, it made the film. And the performances, this is where it gets to his big deciding point. A lot of people say that Willem Dafoe is the Green Goblin, while a good casting choice, went way too over the top. I mean, there are some people out there that think the same thing, and then there are some people out there who think, yeah, it was over the top, but it was entertaining to watch. And for me, I was in that group. I knew this, get my words out, I knew this performance was super over the top and corny. But it's a Sam Raimi film. All of his films have been super over the top and corny. Even his first film, The Evil Dead, which was a straight up horror movie, but it had some decent humour. And with this, we can clearly see that in this film, because Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin is so fun to watch. Even though there are some moments in this film where it's super silly, like them talking on the rooftop, which is a bit silly. And, I guess that's about it, really. This film is a masterpiece, but compared to the films that followed it up, I can say this has the cornier writing, the cornier visuals, the cornier acting, and while I do enjoy a bit of corny, this is just that little step too far. Because basically they were still trying to find their thing. But apart from that, this film is an absolute masterpiece, and I'll never stop watching it. If the corniness comes out of me. Now, let's move on to our 4th place contender, which would probably be, I don't know, either the most controversial or the second most controversial picking I'll put on this. Yep, okay. I know, just calm down a second. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, released in 2014 and directed by Mark Webb. Now, I know most of the people who watch this right now are going to despise me for putting this in the 4th spot. But just hear me out on this one. I know this film has its issues. I really do. I know that it has way too much stuff going on. Like, way too many plot lines and way too many characters coming in. Like, 3 villains in this that need to be developed in this movie to be set up for other movies. It is a very hard task, and for this film, it didn't really work. Because the motives in this film, apart from Harry Osborn, the motives were so rushed and so weak. And Electro is basically copying what Edward Nygma, Batman Forever, and Aldrich Killian in Iron Man 3 did. They're the doofuses, they're the weirdos who somehow get overpowered, or get a new costume and then start becoming creepy stalkers. And with casting Paul Giamatti, one of the best actors going, making him one of the best Spider-Man villains, Rhino, and having him in the film for a couple of minutes, what a wasted opportunity. But apart from those problems, if they don't bother you so bad, it's a pretty entertaining film. I totally believe the relationship between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. Yeah, I mean, Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy. It is so realistic. You wouldn't not believe these two are a couple in real life. And okay, yeah. While Jamie Foxx's Electro is a bit weird and a little bit over the top, he was very entertaining to watch for me, especially with the makeup effects and the action sequences he was in. I thought it was an amazing visual style to watch. And yeah, the action and the visuals and the comedy and the acting in this film are very, very well done. And I love the musical score, by the way. This is probably my favourite musical score in a Spider-Man movie. But yeah, it's a bit too hard to not talk about its problems, and yeah, I probably have to rethink about putting this in the 4th spot. But at the minute, I just enjoyed it more than the ones that came before. Now, let's move on to our film in 3rd place. Now, this one might be a little bit mixed. Yeah, Venom, released in 2018 and directed by Ruben Fleischer. Now, this is a particularly interesting film because while it was panned by critics, you can check a look at its Rotten Tomatoes score. It's got 29%. But if you look at the audience score, 81%. That means even though it was panned by critics for its screenplay, its tone, its direction, surprisingly, a very, very, very large amount of people enjoyed this movie. And it's for a lot of reasons. Because before we had this, we had Topher Grace's Venom, that dweeby kid from the 70s show. Awful memories. And yeah, seeing Tom Hardy, quite a bulky guy, playing Venom, playing Eddie Brock, who's supposed to be a bulky jock in the comics, it's kind of a dream come true. And the action in this film is so amazing. And Venom, he might not have the white Spider-Man symbol, but he looks so much like the comic. It is insane. Oh my god. So, what did I think of this film? Yeah, I could agree there were some scenes that I found completely pointless. And the villain, I found him quite weak. You know, your typical, humanity is destroying the world, we need something new. Yeah, he was a bit annoying, and he's going to be very, very, very forgettable. But, yeah, that's his name, Carlton Drake. But apart from those problems, I find the most of the film, it's probably one of the most entertaining superhero films I've watched in the last few years. And while I'm not saying it's like something like Avengers Infinity War or bloody, Into the Spider-Verse, I think I would gladly take it over Topher Grace's Venom. So, there you go. Venom's took the bronze. And now, let's get to our 2nd place contestant. And, yeah, you're probably going to kill me once I tell you what it is. Okay, I'm going to get so many hate comments after this. Yeah, Spider-Man 3, released in 2007 and directed by Sam Raimi. Okay, just hear me out on this one. 50% of the reason why I put this movie in 2nd place is nostalgia. It's the Spider-Man movie that I do remember watching the most, and it was one that I did really, really, really enjoy. And it's also the reason why I picked up so much of the merchandise. But hear me out on this one. Apart from its big issues, like again, juggling way too many. The problem with this film is that they juggled way too many characters in this film. We have the new Goblin, played by James Franco, who's kind of already established in the trilogy, and Sandman. They already gave him a developed story during the film, and we kind of felt for him by the end. But the big problem with this film is the horrible misuse of Venom. We had been wanting to see this character on the big screen for years. But the thing was, Sam Raimi didn't want to do the character in this film, but Sony had pushed him to do it. So they forced him to put the character in, and yeah, it clearly shows, and it was only in the film for the last 10 minutes, and we're like, oh, fuck you, movie. So you see what I mean? We were all like that. I know we were all like that. But apart from those big issues, this movie, I'd say, is probably the most entertaining out of the trilogy, because the action is a lot more improved, especially with the CGI. And, well, the story as well, for as many characters as it's got in, is still fairly substantial. And it's got some good moments in it. But then, we gotta get to the big problem here. Emo Peter Parker. Now, I know I like this film, but I do have a limit. The emo Peter Parker and that stupid dance sequence, I know when it's stupid, and this was as stupid as you could get. And again, the horrible misuse of Venom, what a wasted opportunity. I know this film has its major issues, but because I simply enjoyed it more than the rest of the movies, this is why I put it in the second spot. But don't worry, we're ending this note on a positive note, so let's look at our winner. Yes, Spider-Man 2, released in 2004 and directed by Sam Raimi. Yes, we could all relax now. I put the best Spider-Man film in the first spot. Now, yeah, there's so much good stuff about this film. The acting, the writing, the visuals, the action sequences. So much of this film is really, really well done. Like Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, probably the best Spider-Man villain to date. And, well, there's just so much good stuff in it. And the horror aspects that you can slightly see in this film, very well made. But I do have one problem. It's a nitpick, but it's a problem for me. There are too many scenes in this film where Spider-Man loses his powers, and we see him trying to go on with his college work and all that, and his job. There's too many bits of it where we see Peter Parker acting like a doofus, where he trips over thin air, where it pauses on that bit where he's like this. Yeah, it's a bit stupid. But apart from that, this movie, I consider one of the best superhero films out there. I really do. And it's definitely one that I would rewatch, and I highly recommend it for big Spider-Man fans. So, all in all, this film is probably the perfect representation of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, because they tackled one of the best Spider-Man stories out there, Spider-Man No More. And they did it perfectly. They really did. So that's what I can say about this film. And the winner, obviously, is Spider-Man 2. And that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. I know, again, this has been another controversial list, but everybody's got their own taste in superhero movies. Everybody has their own opinion, and we just have to learn to accept it, I suppose. So, again, thank you so much for watching. And the next superhero list, well, this is what we're going to have to talk about right now. Since I'll be starting school again in 2 weeks, I probably might not have enough time to fit in one more list. So if I don't have enough time by until the 9th of September when I go back to school, I probably won't be able to make another video until the Halloween season. But don't worry, because that might be a good thing, because we could do a horror-themed few episodes where I can go through some old horror movie franchise. Well, we never know. It could be Friday the 13th, it could be Alien, it could be Predator, it could be Halloween. We could do whatever we want with this. But if I manage to get one more video to fit in before I go back to school, I'll just have to see what I can do. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Lakin22, and this has been the Lakin22 Movie Chat.